All right, I've got a two appliance showcase today. First of all, start by saying that I had not done anything since the end of last summer slash fall when I messed up R2's body. What I had painted up to that point, I pretty much didn't touch until this year, and summer got off to a slow start here in the Pacific Northwest, but it's now like tied with the record number of 90-degree days ever. So I picked up the weather and I started working again on R2D2 like crazy. I also started looking at videos. I hadn't been on the Michael Baddeley forums. I hadn't looked at astromech.net. I hadn't looked at other people's builds. I think I maybe watched one or two videos in that time on YouTube relating to other builds. I just was so ticked off at my paint mess up that I just didn't even want to deal with it until this year. So this year I've done some reading and some viewing, and I will say a couple things off the bat. I'm trying to make my videos shorter. I go back and I watch other people's videos, and then I look at mine because I forgot what I was doing in some of the parts that I had painted last year, and I'm like, oh my goodness, my videos are way too long. How does anybody watch these things? So I'm trying to make my videos shorter and more to the point. And also thank everybody who has posted comments about basically don't be such a perfectionist with the paint job. This is R2D2. This is an astromech droid. This is kind of like a home appliance. You know, these things have been around and been knocked around, and they don't have to be perfect. And I'm telling myself now that, and I think I'm starting to believe it, that I don't need to spend quite so long getting everything quite so perfect when no one's going to see it unless they're 6 inches away or lying on the ground, looking at the feet or something like that. So I'm trying to be better about that, not letting it get me down if I get a little tiny run, or if I see some area that I paint and I'm like, oh, that could have used another coat of primer or just a little bit more filler. It's fine. I need to get this thing moving, and I'm not going to let just the little tiny defects just make me stop and scrape everything all the way back down, paint off, and do it all over again. So thanks everybody for encouraging me, saying that things look good. That really does helps me realize that everybody's droid is going to have something, multiple things probably that they look at and they're like, oh, that could have been better. But other people are just going to look at the droid on the whole and just be like amazed, oh my god, that's an R2D2, that's amazing. And it's just the person who made it's going to see the little defects. So I'm trying to come around to that mindset. So that out of the way, this is kind of a video of what I've been doing since I started working on R2 again this year. And I feel like I did a heck of a lot of progress, especially this last 2 weeks. Just crazy the amount of parts that I got looking decent and primed, and filler and sand and blah blah blah, and got some paint on. So just wanted to go over a couple things. Foot drives. I showed in previous video how I've got Bondo on that top edge where the PETG didn't print too well. There it is. I've also shaved the area out where the nut goes. I have the nut. I have the axle bolt. I haven't cut the axle bolt. Whether that's going to hold up under the weight and the pressure and movement and bumps, I don't know. But right now, it's the best solution I could come up with, and it looks really good for now anyway. I've done the Tim Hebel mod right there. You can see that custom part that he has. Watch Jason Charlton's video on assembling the drive units. Great video. I'll try and remember to put a link in this video to his video where he goes over all of these modifications. But I've got that mod installed, which is basically that half moon there has a 3D printed pin that is a weak point. So this mod made by Tim Hebel, that's on the Michael Baddeley Facebook group, is basically a larger sized half moon to spread the load a little bit more on the back, and then that center bolt actually goes through the pin. So the pin is now hollow and you put a bolt through it. So it gives it that extra support, so it's not just a plastic bolt that the gear and bearings that are on that. It's actually got a metal bolt going through it. The other one is 8mm linear rail shafts. They're used for 3D printer rails, usually. Buying some of those, cutting them, and getting these collars. And again, Jason Charlton has the information for those parts. Thank you, Jason. So you cut the axle and you put it on there with a couple of these collars. I flattened one end, has a small flat spot, so you can tighten up the, there it is, that black grub screw. Tightens onto the flat part of the shaft that I ground. And so you've got a metal shaft axle going through there, so that doesn't break. I don't have the motors in because I'm working on the Tim Hebel motor mod, where you print out his gear that goes on the motor that is made to accommodate a metal flange. So it's not just a 3D printed gear that goes on the motor. It's an actual metal flange that bolts to the motor shaft. And I'm just waiting on the M3 square nuts to arrive to fit that onto the motors, and then I can actually put motors in the drive units, which is a shock. Next, the foot shells I had painted last year, but this year I did the silver. So masked that off, masked the whole foot shells off, and sprayed those on both sides. They turned out great. Center foot shell, did that one today. Again, masked off the area to paint, and then the whole foot, so no spray silver would go on the foot. This one I actually remembered to sand. I sanded this area that was white with 400 grit wet sandpaper before I sprayed the metal on, the metallic. This one I didn't, but honestly the paint works really well and it looks fine. It looks pretty much like the one that I actually sanded before I put the paint on. I am using Rust-Oleum Bright Coat Metallic Finish. I'm using it for all the metal parts. I'm not going with two different colors. I'm just using this one color. I'll be doing the dome in this. I don't want to mess with rub and buff on the dome. Being a wax product, if it gets dust in it or fingerprints, then yeah, I just don't want to deal with that. So I'm just going to be painting the dome as of my plan now with this same metallic finish. So it'll be that same bright silver color, which might be a bit bright for aluminum, but I think it looks really good. And I believe I snagged that idea also from Jason Charlton. I think that's what he used on his dome as well. Since I'm looking at the ankle, I just put that together tonight. I just put that together. And I was looking online, I couldn't figure out where in the instructions it told you the length of the bolts, right? There's two M4 bolts on each side, and then each of these cylinders uses two square nuts. So there's two square nuts in the cylinders in a rectangular piece that protrudes out, and then it goes into a rectangular slot in the ankle. And then you put two bolts. Those are 25mm M4 bolts that secure the ankle cylinders, which you have to do before you attach the ankle. Because once you attach the ankle, I don't think you can get in there to where those bolts attach for the ankle cylinders. So that tonight is why I'm making a video. I put this together and it's like, oh my goodness, I actually have an ankle finished. And going back to what I was saying about the paint, I did not repaint this. So this is the one that's got that whiter and shinier finish. I looked at photos of R2, which I haven't even been doing. So in my mind, the center foot I thought was way up front and center where you can see it. But it's tucked under to the point where that finish, you're not even probably going to notice. It's probably going to be in shadow all the time from R2. So the ankle cylinders, again, they're that metallic silver. They are the Sonic Blue Pearl Duplicolor Blue. I put a satin clear on them both. I had to look up, people say put the clear on after the color. And I was like, well, when? When it's still wet? That I've never done that before. Put something over another paint while it's wet. I let things dry for a couple weeks before, for example, I painted the whole cylinders silver. A couple weeks later, I came back, taped it off, and did the blue. But online, it's like 10, 15 minutes after you spray the blue, spray the clear. And I'm like, how's that going to work? One's Duplicolor, one's Rust-Oleum. Are they going to eat each other up? And I just decided to go for it. Excuse me. Decided to go for it, and it went fine. It looks good. And then I saw online where everybody's using gloss over the blue parts to really make them pop. So I was like, well, I can mask it again and put gloss over the satin, and I think that'll make it gloss. I'm pretty sure. But again, after looking at them and looking at pictures of R2 where you can see the ankle cylinders, they're tucked underneath in shadow, and tell me right there if you'd be able to tell the difference if that was a satin or a chrome finish. So I'm like, I think they look great, and I am happy with them, and I'm just going to leave them the way they are. For masking, thanks to people on the forums, I bought off Amazon some Tamiya, however you pronounce it, Tamiya yellow masking tape. I got two different sizes. The wider one I got is 10 millimeters wide, and it comes in like a tape dispenser. And that's the one I've been using. I shouldn't have got the thinner one because I don't think I need the thinner one. The thinner one would be good if you're going to try and do curves. The cylinder is obviously just straight line and a circle. And most of the other stuff I believe that needs masking that has two colors are, pretty straight. One thing's silver and then it turns blue, like the ankle details. So yeah, I put that stuff down, and then I used blue painter's tape with newspaper on top of that tape to cover the rest of the cylinder so that only this area was exposed. I tried to get the tape down into that indentation a little bit, and it worked okay. My only issue was I painted the blue, and then after a while I painted the clear, and then I let it dry a bit too long. When I pulled the tape off, I got a bit of chipping. And the second side that I did turned out better because I remembered online somebody suggested going over the line with an X-Acto knife. Now I did, but that X-Acto blade that I used was not really sharp, so it worked really good up until a point where I kind of got the dull part of the blade and it didn't quite cut through the clear. But it ended up just a couple little tiny touch-ups that I did with like a toothpick, sprayed some of the blue paint onto a piece of cardboard, then used a toothpick to get some on the end and just used a little tiny bit to get it where it is, and that's it. I didn't even clear over the touch-ups because they were so small and just basically on the edge of the indentation there. So yeah, I think that I'm really pleased with that ankle. I think that looks great. So happy about that. The other thing I painted were the half moons for the center foot here. I need to do a little bit of filing. I think the edge here I need to file down because they seem to ride a little bit high. And looking at it, You can see, you might be able to see a partial circle here. That's from a helper disc, right? I printed these I don't think I printed these on the Prusa. Oh, maybe I did. This is the Prusament silver filament that I got when I bought my printer. Anyway, I think that the edge, the inside edge, is a bit of elephant's foot or whatever. I didn't sand that as much as I should. So I should just be able to sand that a bit, just like beveling that, just the edge, and it should fit in there fine, and you won't see it because the paint is on this flat edge, and I'll just be taking a little bit of the inside edge off because it'll fit. It just seems just a hair big for the opening. So I got those done. I also have the center ankle piece that goes in here. It's the first time I've put that in there since it's been painted. So there's that, which needs to be painted white because of this. It does sit a bit low. I'm not happy with that. I don't know what the deal is. These sit here flush, and that's a bit low. But and I haven't really I haven't made a metal pin for this yet instead of the 3D printed one. So I'm thinking that this just presses down on this. So these will be flush, and that's fine if this part is inset a little, because again, it'll be in shadow underneath the droid. You might see these, but you probably won't even see the fact that that has a little step down. What I'm worried about is, though, that with the wheels, when this is attached to the wheels, that plus that, I just can't in my mind right now figure if it's going to stay like this, where these are nice and kind of flush with the tops of the foot shell, or if it's going to raise these up like that, so that the middle is level and these are raised up. So I'll have to see. Hopefully it'll end up like that. But either way, there's not really much I think I can do about it other than trying to reprint these so that this ends up higher, which is just weird. I don't know what is off, that this centerpiece is a bit of a step down. Anyway, hubs. Again, I just did my best with these to sand them as smooth as I could, and then used the metallic, the same color. I know there's lots of different stuff people try with these. They might put rub and buff on these to get them brighter. They might use aluminum tape to get them brighter. All kinds of different things. Right now I'm happy with the way they look here. Who knows, maybe I'll end up doing rub and buff or something on them. But right now I'm happy with how they are. I've done the ankle bracelets. I just today, another trick from somebody on the forums, I went to Hobby Lobby and got these little wooden skewer things, and then use hot glue, and that way you can keep these steady. When I was doing primer, I just had these sitting on a wooden board, and the actual spray coming out of the spray can was making them move a bit across the board. So it kind of forced me not to put heavy coats on, because if I got too close, it started moving and I was going to fall off the board. But this way, what I actually did, I put a black rubber glove on after the first one of these got white paint on my hands. Put a black rubber glove, whatever, vinyl rubber glove on, and actually held it with one hand and was spraying it with the other hand. And that way I could kind of, if I sprayed the side, I could kind of go like that afterwards. So the paint, if I happened to put too much on, wouldn't pool at the bottom. It would kind of level out. Same thing with the top, and they turned out just fine. Then I have over here, these are the parts that the outer foot shells or outer ankles, the cylinders go like this. Oh, that's interesting. I thought that that was the same width as the blue part in the center of the ankle, and it's wider. Huh, interesting. Again, I need to go back and look at my R2 resources. Anyway, the center of this needs to be blue, and these need to be blue, and I read online that if you do a coat of silver first, it makes the Sonic Blue Pearl look better. So I've done a coat of silver on both of those, so I'll let those sit for at least a week before I paint them blue. Then we've got the ankle details. Again, I'm looking at R2D2 resources online. Is there something in that rectangle? Should it be painted? Should it be metallic? Should it be whatever? I'm going to leave it metallic because it looked like that's what I saw online. And again, every R2D2 droid is different. They change throughout the movie, throughout the different movies, throughout different scenes. So do whatever you want, whatever you like. But this end piece does need to be painted blue. So again, I'm going to have to wait at least a week for this silver to dry and cure, because then I'll have to put tape around the border between this tab and the rest of this piece on the end there, and spray this tab blue on all 4 of those pieces. So, and I showed these. These were not ready for paint today. I managed today to, what did I do today? I primed all 4 of these in the morning. And I went and got lunch. I came back and I had primed these 4 pieces the night before, so I sanded those 400 grit wet sandpaper, and I painted those. A couple trips to the hardware store, came back, and then these I wet sanded and sprayed these. So everything there was painted today. This was primed last night, and I'm fairly sure that I'm going to need at least one more sand and then some filler before sanding again, because these, because they have the gloss blue and the metallic, you really see every imperfection when you use that metallic silver paint. So I want to get as many of the layer lines out of here as I can. I did a pretty good job so far. It should be pretty close on both of these. And then I'll do the same thing. Paint them all silver and wait for a week or two, and then put it to my yellow masking tape, and then tape the rest of the silver off, cover it with paper so it doesn't get any overspray on it, spray blue, and then come back with, and then after about 10-15 minutes, spray it with gloss clear, and then I'll wait for, I don't know, half hour maybe, and then come back with a sharp X-Acto, a new X-Acto blade, and run around the edges of the tape, so when I pull the tape off, it doesn't pull the paint. So, yeah. So as I try to keep the video short and not go over what I've already gone over, which I notice I tend to do a lot too, that about wraps it up. This is most of what I've done this year, which, I don't know, it kind of looks to me now that it's on the table that it's, that's not that much, but between initial sanding, priming, filler, priming, I mean, it takes multiple days to get pieces ready. So working on these 4 things at once, that was a time saver. And then I worked on these 4 things all at the same time, and So that helped, because if previously with bigger parts, I'd spend the majority of the day and get maybe one part done, like once the foot shell was glued together, sanding the whole foot shell or whatever would take quite a while, and putting filler on it would take up quite a while. So these small parts are a little bit better because I can get multiple done in a day. And if I'm lucky, I might be able to sand, prime, sand, filler. So maybe multiple steps in a day, whereas with the bigger parts, I tended to do a prime, leave it overnight, and then I would sand it and do filler, let it sit overnight, and then sand and prime again. So I'm trying to, in this hot weather, the filler, the Bondo glazing putty dries, within a couple hours. It doesn't need to be left overnight. And the primer also, I don't need to leave it overnight. So I feel like I'm getting quite a bit done compared to last year when I was mostly working on the body. So it was mostly the body and the foot shells, or 2 outer foot shells that I got done. So that's about it. Again, thank everybody for your support. I am realizing that things are looking actually pretty darn good. And it's nice with that ankle to have a piece that's like together. That's the center ankle. It's actually a complete center ankle. I could put the skirt and the center ankle on R2 now. Of course, I'd have to put them upside down instead of right side up without the foot. And then technically this is done now with the silver paint. So basically all I need is the axle, and I can have the center foot whole assembly complete. So parts are starting to actually come together now, which is really promising, although it's still at the stage. Once I started gluing things together, some of my plastic storage boxes would empty because, instead of having these 2 things in a storage box, glued it into one. But now I've got a bunch of big things, so it's still taking up a lot of storage. So now I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to stop right there. All right, thanks again, guys, and we'll see you for the next video, which, again, because most of what I'm doing is sanding, priming, painting, there isn't a lot of things to talk about, so I'm not sure what the next video will be or when.